Days later, Jesus took with him Peter and James and his brother John and led them up a high mountain by themselves. And he was transfigured before them, and his face shone like the sun, and his clothes became dazzling white. Suddenly there appeared to them Moses and Elijah talking with Jesus. Then Peter said to Jesus, "Lord, it's good for us to be here. If you wish, I'll make 3 dwellings here, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." And while he was still speaking, suddenly a bright cloud overshadowed them. And from the cloud a voice said, "This is my Son, the beloved, with whom I am well pleased. Listen to him." When the disciples heard this, they fell to the ground, overcome by fear. But Jesus came and touched them, saying, "Get up and do not be afraid." And when they looked up, they saw no one except Jesus himself alone. As they were coming down from the mountain, Jesus ordered them, "Tell no one about the vision until after the Son of Man has been raised from the dead." So we come to the Transfiguration, that the story, at least the way Matthew tells it, Luke adds a bit more detail for it. And we come to the mountain and all the amazing things that happen in that, and some very nitty-gritty stuff as well. Peter Callaghan is going to be our guest this week. Peter is on the leadership team at Maleny Uniting Church. G'day, Peter.
Hi, how are you? Phil, good to see you.
It's good to be digging into Matthew's gospel. The more opportunity we have to just focus in one thing for a while, the richer it seems to become. So what are the bits of the Transfiguration story, which is always such a weird, mystical thing? What about it grabs you?
I don't know. I think, it's the actual, just putting myself in the place of these disciples and thinking of the powerful, transformative, spiritual experience it must have been for them. I mean, here they are, on the top of the mountain, and here's Christ shining brightly, visited by Moses and Elijah. Cloud comes down and says, "This is my Son, listen to him." I mean, the experience must have been incredible for those guys.
And I guess that's the thing, Matthew is always trying to achieve a couple of things, and one of them is to tell us who Jesus is. Matthew's gospel is the kingdom of heaven gospel, and this is the king of the kingdom. This is who Jesus is, and so to show him in that, pardon the pun, in that light is very important for the disciples. But also the fact that, whatever has come before, the law and the prophets, Moses and Elijah.
Exactly.
Experience of the cloud of glory on the mountain, another mountain. That's all wonderful, but this is that one, the one anointed one, my own beloved Son, who fulfills all that stuff. Moses brought you the 10 Commandments, but this
exactly the law and the prophets.
It's like all that stuff, and maybe that actually leads us to an interesting point. And I have often wondered, amongst all those things that they see, which are good in themselves, there's Moses, there's Elijah, there's the law, the prophets, tradition, there's the recollection of the Exodus, and that Jesus will make a new Exodus, and so on. But when they stop and look again, they see only Jesus himself alone. All that other stuff, as wonderful as it may be, the light show, the smoke machine, the celebrity preachers, all that stuff, they see Jesus himself alone. And that's what matters. That's the focus.
That's right. Exactly. And I think there's sort of lessons here. But, just take a step back. I mean, these guys have been brought up in the synagogues and in the law, and their expectations of what a Messiah was going to be were, a knight in shining armor, to put it into a modern context. This Messiah was going to come and, restore Israel through power and might. And so that's the lens that they were using to try and interpret, I suppose, what, the Messiah experience. And I think in some ways, this whole experience sort of, was a change for them, in that even though they went away and they still had their arguments, they still were normal disciples who were questioning and seeing what Jesus continued to do, and still arguing about who was the most important in the group of disciples, and still turning children away, doing all those sorts of things. For those three disciples, the experience and was a significant spiritual experience which they and they alone had access to. And
I find it fascinating. And you were saying, they've got this framework that they not but live in and work in. They've been born and raised in these traditions, very much the same as we have been born and raised in our traditions. And then Jesus blows all that away. And as they're going down the mountain, he says, look, don't tell anybody about this.
Oh, that's right.
It won't make sense until after I'm raised from the dead. Well, that in itself is that's a whole other crazy thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, this doesn't need to, I know you're struggling with this. It'll make sense once everything has to come to pass. And that kind of takes us back to the beginning of the reading. I always find it fascinating when a reading starts off with after this, or in this case, 6 days after this, Jesus, whatever. So I always get, well, hang on, after what?
Yeah.
So you duck back to chapter 16.
Yeah.
6 days ago, he's telling them, I'm going to go to Jerusalem and die on a cross.
Yes.
And I want you to take up your cross and
follow. Yes, exactly. Yeah, it must have been incomprehensible.
So, what we were saying about, the Messiah, who's going to do all these things and he's going to look like Moses or Elijah or the Maccabees brothers, says, I'm going to get crucified. And 6 days later, he takes them up and shows them that even though that is still going to happen, this is who he is. And I wonder if the transfiguration or the transformation for us as disciples is that key point of who is this? This is not Messiah as we imagine him. He's not a wandering rabbi. He's not a used-to-be carpenter. This is my beloved son, the one in whom I am well pleased. It's that guy. And in a sense,
we all, in a sense, have big transformational experiences across our lives. And, for me, it was, the salvation. It was, a retreat I went on where I had a real transformational experience. And it was doing some mission work over in the Philippines, where once again I saw God just provide us on a day-by-day basis with, and deliver miracles on a day-by-day basis as we just listened to him. But the funny thing is, and probably even like the disciples, we sort of return to the things we, can see or feel or know from our lens of our experience, and or smell, and I think in one way that is a real encouragement here, that even the disciples who participated in those three disciples who participated in, saw the transfiguration, sort of returned to what they knew. And I think that can be a real encouragement for us to press on in the faith, press on and seek and listen to what Jesus has to say to us.
And Jesus' last few words in that passage to them are beautiful to us. Do not be afraid. For us to see who he is, to marvel at the possibilities, and then to hear him say, and don't be afraid. Let's get to it. Thank you so much, Peter. Always appreciate spending time with you, and every blessing this week.
Thanks, Phil, and to you too.